turn on the map and turn on the area buildings. Now it's not sitting on a building. Okay, fine. So we know where we can start modeling. So I'm going to turn off the street map and I'm going to turn off the buildings. And what I wanted to do is to create a cube that is near this. So I'm clicking off to turn it off, and I'm adding a mesh. I'm adding a cube. And that cube is somewhere. There it is. But way off on the landscape. So we have to move that cube to where our tank is. So let me hit the period key to go to. It won't do it. There's something very bizarre here. You can get lost a little bit. If I turn on the OpenStreetMap, where is that? Oh, we're way off in... We're not that far off. So that cube can be moved about, but where is my IBC tank? We should be able to see it. So the IBC tank is, get period, it's not going there. Stranger than fiction sometimes, Blender. Stranger than fiction. Where are you? And why can't I find you? I've selected you. Oh, you're way over here. And I hit that, and something bizarre has happened. Oh, there's the IBC. Is it that possibly that massive? Let's see if we can find the cube at the same time. Where's the cube? Well, what we can do is we can look at the IBC tank and we can look at the view and look at the location. Way down in there. What am I actually looking at? I'm looking at, I need some kind of control point that I'm looking at, and then I can go to Filter, Objects, Selected, and then this object that I've selected, Group 39, is at this location, -48, -7, and a z of 4. So -48, -7 is the basic idea, and we just almost crashed the system because it's a new version of Blender. Alright, so now finding that cube again, if I go down to All, and I go to Cube, there's my cube, and the location here, we said what, -48 and negative something else, which was -16 or something. But where is that darn cube? There's the cube. So the cube is there, and the landscape that we're working with is somewhere else. So the cube is definitely not in the right place. -48 moves it over, and that is sort of where we are. So what is that? That's the cube. And what did we have for the IBC tank? We're still on the cube. Select the IBC. Somehow it went into edit mode without me wanting to, and that's not nice. And I want the IBC tank, and I want to get to the IBC tank, but it won't let me. There's the IBC tank way over there, and there's our cube. So move the cube on the landscape. Move the cube by doing G in Y and zip it over that way, and move it G and Y and keep moving it up there, and then bring it down because it's too high on the landscape. Bring it down in Z, so GZ. Bring it to the floor there. And you can keep moving around like this. We go to 7 view and come in on that cube. And move it over to the IBC. And in view, if you go to local, sometimes that helps to move things over. It depends what you've selected too, because if you have local and you just select on that, then local rotates based on whatever object you've selected. If you have global, then you end up turning different stuff, because I just want that. All right, and let's line these up and in fact try to make this now as go back to local. Yep. And we really are interested in making it the same basic size. So I'm going to hit S, scale it, and move it down, and I'm going to move this over. One. Let's see what 3 does. I got to get to it. Okay. Move this over in here. And scale this up just a tad and move it up, and scale it down just a tad and move it down, and scale it up just a tad and move it up. And now I'm going to scale it in the y-axis, and now if I hit Z and I go into Wireframe, then you can see what's inside. And I'm going to scale it in X. So now I have a cube that's almost the same size, which is great. And now I can move that cube, which is almost the same size, over, and I can begin to have some fun with it for making my biodigester, which will now be the same size. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to make the holes for the pipes that we put, and I want to make the center hole for the cap. So for that, the first thing I want is I want that lid, and the lid I could make myself also. Make a much more simple version of the lid, and once again the way that I do that is go into Blender and say add, and this time add a mesh which is a cylinder, which is way too big, and shrink it down, because we're going to shrink it to about the size of the actual lid, and zoom up in there and keep moving it and keep shrinking it so that that lid is now the right size. And as you can see, it's still whopping too big, so we'll bring it down. By the way, if you hit the 1 key, you get a front orthographic. If you hit the 3 key, you get a side orthographic. So you want to play around with those orthographic views to make things work out. So I'm going to shrink it down that way, then I'm going to hit Scale and Z and flatten it up, and then I'm going to hit GZ to move it down. And then by using my 1 key, I can see if it's working there. The 3 key, the 9 key, the 7 key is the top. So that is not a horrible look for it. And then move it around. And if you're kind of happy with that, as I am, because I'm making a very simple model, I can move that then right on over to my other tank and then drop it in the center someplace and drop this down and start messing with that so that you have your approximation of the tank, making simple geometry as opposed to the very complex geometry you have there. Now, it is fun because everything's all gray, it doesn't look so good. When you're on your cylinder, which I'm going to call the IBC lid TH, so that's my version of it. And there it is. And I don't want it to be a part of that group. I want it to be in its own collection, which I'm going to make here. I'm going to make a collection, add a collection, call this collection IBC digester TH, so I know it's mine, and I'm going to bring the cube in there, and I'm going to bring the lid in there. And when I select the lid, then I can change the color by going to materials, adding a new material, and actually there should be there may be materials in there because this thing has materials, but let's just approximate that color. So I have a material that now is gray, and when I go to the base color, I can use the picker and say I want it to be that shade of red, and it should give me that shade of red. What's going on here? Because I did make it that shade of red, did I not? And I call this IBC digester lid color, so I know what it is that I've done. Now, why it's not showing up? Maybe because I'm not looking at it rendered. If I looked at it rendered, yeah, then the color does show up. So I guess to save memory, the new there it is. The new version of Blender does, in solid, it doesn't give you those colors, but you can get a material preview if you want to see what that would look like. And I guess when you do just solid, you get nothing. Although I'm still mystified about that. And the digester itself, the cube, which I'm going to call IBC digester digester plastic, that is going to have its new material, which I'm going to make a more sort of, I want to make it a yellowish white just to distinguish it from the other one. And when again I click on, I hit the Z and I go to what the rendered version looks like, then you see it's got a distinct color. And usually they're white, but I want it to stand up against other whites. Alright, and material preview would make it show up like that. So, go back to solid. So I have that, and I really want to punch a hole in there because if I want to remove the lid, there should be a hole. And that is done. Some freezing here. Okay, so we want to punch a hole in this, and the way that we punch a hole is using something called a Boolean. And Boolean's kind of cool, but this is a solid block here, and the question is always, do we want to keep it a solid block, or do we want to get into more detailed modeling? Well, it's not too hard to do a Boolean to make this a hollow cube. What you would do is hit Shift D to duplicate the cube, right? And then hit the right click so it stays where it is, but it then shows up as IBC digester plastic 0.001. And then you want to scale it and scale it down just a bit to whatever thickness you want the IBC wall to be. And that is a bit extreme there. So let me go into my properties and properties here. And you can see the scale is now 0.552. If I were to scale it further, that scale keeps jumping around. So when it was back at its original size, then it's already scaled at some weird number. So it's not a one-to-one thing. But you can come in here and say, well, golly, this rectangle is scaled a little bit. And let's look at the wireframe for a second and see what this looks like, how thick you want to make the walls. Maybe we should bring this down to an x to 0.57, and let's bring this down to 0.5, and in z 0.6. That's a bit extreme. Okay, we don't want it to be that thick, so let's bring this up in z just a little bit. But it's just to get a skin of an IBC, and unlike these guys over here on the right who really modeled it well, I want to be able to just use this pedagogically to give concept. That's why I'm going through this this process of making it really simple. So when I go to solid, there is a solid in here that is smaller. If I bring it out, you can see that it's smaller. And so what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to now go to a modifier on the major tank, which says in modifier, Boolean, I want a difference between this and the other object, which is my, I guess I'd have to go way down to find it, or maybe I can just click on it here. Will it let me? It's sort of freezing up now. Hold on. So it just took a while to load in all the different options of the objects that you can put in, and of course these are so there's so many. I saw IBC digester plastic 1, so that's the intersection that we're going to use. And what should happen is when we apply, then hopefully when we move this tank out, that is the inside, and we look into this tank, we should actually see it by going to Z and wireframe. Hopefully it will have cut out something in there. And it appears that it did, because you can see in Z this cube here, the inside cube that was sitting in there, has now been removed. So this is a hollow entity right now because I used this to cut out the inside by doing that Boolean move. So yeah, no, I can keep this around because I could cut out others if I want to make more, but I could simply copy that too. So there's no real reason to keep this around now. This can just be deleted. And now we have a tank that has transparent inside. And then when we use this as a Boolean, actually we're going to take this again, take the same tank, IBC digester plastic, and we're going to say add modifier and say Boolean. But before I actually do that, I've got to take this one here and move it into the tank so it'll cut out that little bit of plastic there. And before I do that, let's just make sure this is all centered. So you have this grid line. So if I move this over into the grid lines, then it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like this line really is the center here. So I can move it right in there, and that should cut out a hole in the center. And let me also go to the top view and make sure that I'm centered there. I have a space there and a bit of space there. Then there's 1, 2, 3, and here's space 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's not centered here. So G and what axis is this? G and you look up here to look at the y. It's the y-axis and y. Should have done G and y. G and Y and move it down. Is this the center? Or roughly the center? So you have 1, 2, 3.5, and 1, 2, 3.5. Yeah, that's the center there. And here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's looks pretty good for the center. And we're going to cut it out there. So once again, you select your tank. You have your Boolean. You're using a difference, not intersect, not union, but a difference. And the object, you can actually use the picker with. So you can come over here and go, I want you to be the object, except it didn't pick anything. All right, should have IBC digester lid. There we go. Now the lid has been selected. And if I apply this, it should have cut out, when I select the lid and move up, it should have cut out a hole, and it did. Ain't that marvy? So now when I go to Z and solid, you'll see there is a hole in the bucket, dear Liza. There's a hole in the IBC. Now, it did make some weird kind of mesh stuff in there. So if we went to tab to edit, actually I shouldn't be in tab, that should be in the tank. You see it's not uniform. And that ain't so good because it didn't have any meshes really to cut. It made the cut between those lines. So sometimes when you want to cut stuff out, I'm going to Control Z out of this if I can. Let me go back out of edit mode. And it froze the computer again. So here I want to be in object mode, and if I see if I can Control Z out of this, maybe I can't. Maybe it's too late, or it's thinking real hard. Again, the problem of having too many objects, too much complexity, and you better have a lot of memory on your computer and a lot of space if you're going to do complex stuff. This is not working. So I probably should not have, because I can't undo anymore. It won't let me. It just freezes when I do. So I probably should have made a copy, and this is a good lesson for all of us. Make a copy before you do any destructive edits of anything, because you will regret it when you can't do anything while the computer thinks and thinks and thinks and thinks. So now it won't do an undo. So I guess what I'm going to try to do here then is I'll have to recreate this cube, and so I will put a. Looks like my cursor doesn't go anywhere. But if I add a cube, will it go where I want it to? Mesh cube. There it is. All right. So I have another cube. Yay. And I'm going to drag it down in Z, and I'm going to look at it from every possible perspective, and I'm going to shrink it down until it's kind of where I want it, and bring it down again in Z, and bring it a little bit bigger, and maybe a little bit bigger still. Oh, that's in Z, so bring it in Z, move it in Z. So I'm getting a tank now, and let me go to Wireframe, and now move it and shrink it in the Y-axis. And look at it from that perspective and that perspective. It's not bad. So there's my other cubed solid, which is about the same size as the IBC tank. Let me bring it over here. I really should have brought it on G and X. Use your axes as much as possible. And bring it down. Let me bring it right down on the red line. That will make it a little easier. This guy should have been brought down to the red line, the axis. And my lid, I can simply Shift D and then move it over. Okay. So now that I have this cube, which now is just called cube, and I want it to be called IBC base cube, or reference cube, let's say ref cube. I know what that means. Then I can duplicate this, and that ref cube is a ref cube for me, but now I can move that one over, and I can work with this one here. Well, that's my ref cube, so I move that one over here and move this one back in to work with it in X. All right. And with this ref cube, so I have that now, and I'm not going to mess with that. I'm going to mess with this one here. You'll see the difference now. Of course, I've got to, once again, I've got to create a mini cube in here. So I should have kept that, shouldn't I? I duplicated it, and I'm going to make it, scale it in just a bit as we did before. And let me scale it out a bit. And do this completely by eyeball, really now, and see what it looks like in the wireframe mode. Gives a bit of a thin wall on everything. That's not too bad, I guess, for an IBC tank. And then I'm going to call this one my IBC Boolean reference. And I will keep it from now on in case I want to do this manipulation again. Silly me. So I'm going to take the cube here, which is my reference cube 1, which is now going to be called my IBC digester plastic 2, and I will take that and add a modifier, which is a Boolean, and it's going to be a difference modifier. So again, don't use intersector union. I'm going to pick my object, which is going to be my Boolean ref, and then bing, that's picked, and then I'm going to apply it. And what it should do when I move my Boolean ref out, which is this one here, if I take it out, yes, I have a tank that's hollow now, which is just great. So I'm going to move this over into my world. Now, this one created a funky shape, as you saw when I went into solid. It got all bowed out because when it was doing the Boolean, it had to invent where to do the cut. So in this time, in this case, and let me place my lid in the right place this time, and maybe the best way to do that is to go to Wireframe and move that into the center and do the counting again. This looks like these are evenly spaced, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's in there, and 1, 2, 3, 4, yes, good there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that's about the half space, about the same. Okay, so that looks pretty well centered. So I'm going to take G and Z and move it down, and then hit 1 so we can see how far down we are. I can move it a little bit more down. Okay, so I would want to do a manipulation there, but there's nothing to really cut there. So what I really like to do is to go into the edit mode by hitting tab and go into the top part, and now deselect everything and go out of Z into solid and select just the top vertices if that is possible. Let's see, yes, I just got the top. Alright, so having done the top vertices only, which you can also verify by going into Wireframe and seeing what you selected. Yes, we've just selected the top. Now I'm going to hit W for subdivide, and nothing happened. Why? Why did nothing happen? Let me go back and get that, like that. Hit escape. What you doing? Because I should be able to hit subdivide. It is mesh. And it is... I don't know why I'm getting this. That's a bounding box. What's that big cursor doing there? I saw subdivide there, so this is sort of strange. So when I right click, I can hit subdivide, and then as you see, what happens is it subdivides it. And then I can hit subdivide again. And now I've subdivided it again. And it'll eat up memory the more you subdivide, but it'll help you to punch holes in that don't affect the entire digester. So maybe this is about the level that I want to do my subdivision. And if I do it like that, and then go tab out, oh, I subdivided the entire cube. No, that's too much memory. And my Control Z ain't doing nothing. So it is doing, Control Z is working, but it takes a long time. Try to remove all these subdivisions. So yeah, I'm going to undo all of it. All right, and I really didn't want to get everything there. I really just wanted to get these vertices. And that's what I wanted to subdivide. And if I hit W, nothing happens. If I hit subdivide, okay, that's all I wanted. I just wanted to subdivide the top. And that's because in a Solar Cities IBC, the way I designed it is that you only have to do work through the top. You don't mess with the rest of the IBC. So I'm going to subdivide it, and now that I've subdivided it, I go back to object mode, and it has all these subdivisions in there, so that when I go to solid, I can select the tank and then add my modifier. And maybe actually before I do that, I'm going to Shift D and move that over, and I'm going to call this IBC digester plastic with subdivisions. And so I have one. And if you looked at these under Wireframe, you would see a bunch of different things. You would see that this one has no subdivisions. That's the tank that actually is called the Boolean reference for cutting out the center of a solid cube, which is what this one is. These had stuff cut out of them, and the top on this, and this one has already got those holes in it. So I can select this tank and then add the Boolean modifier and pick as the object. I wonder if I can just pick the lid, which would be lid number 1, which is that one. Yeah, you can pick it from there. Isn't that cool? And then hit apply. And now it should be so that when I select just the lid and I move it, and I'm going to move it up in Z just to lift it up, there's a hole cut out. And it's a much nicer hole than we got over here. As you can see, when we go to the solid, we don't have that deformation. Now, as for the color, I can go into the materials color and add a color, and I should find it in this list here. And I have so many colors there. I have to load, but there are IBC lid colors there, and then I guess I never called the other color anything. I should have. So what is this color here? This one has a color that I called, I didn't call it anything, I called it material 1. So I'm going to call this IBC tank color. And that way that's named so that when I click on this one, I can go through that reference list and find alphabetically IBC reference color. IBC tank color. Boom. That lets me know. And isn't that cool that you have a much better hole when you do that? That's going to be important because we're going to create a bunch of other cylinders for our tank, for the 2-inch pipe and the 4-inch pipe. But we got the right lid size for sure. Let me hit save. And let me now go to the 3D warehouse and let me get a 4-inch pipe, 4-inch PVC. And what do we got for 4-inch? storm drain, screw coupling. There's a lot of stuff in here, but the best 4-inch pipe would be probably to take a 4-inch T and make the hole. But we need it for reference just so we get what the standard is for a 4-inch pipe. Here they have 4-inch schedule 30, a bunch of different pieces in one. We could get those, but that's a lot of memory. Here we go, 4 through 1/2 inch. So actually there's a whole bunch of pipes here, starting at 4 and going all the way down to 1/2 inch pipe. So we're going to do the collada file, and we'll open it up. It's going to be in our downloads. And we can cut it and put it into our Blender GIS 3D models, paste it in here, unzip it to its own folder, and there it is there. Remember to name the model. So this is PVC pipe set 4 to 1/2, and bring it in to Blender. And I don't need to be able to see now my maps. And bring this in, click off so there's nothing selected, although maybe it's better to have something selected because then it'll come in near it. And then import that collada, and that collada is under schedule 40 pipe. And there's our pipes down there. They all kind of came in on the floor. So I'm going to select all of them and move them nearer to where I want it to work. So we'll move it maybe over here where I can get at them, and move them down to the ground. And then zoom in on it. And let me find the 4-inch pipe, which I believe is this one here, because it said 4 was its largest. Does it actually tell us anything? Let's see. So we zoom in here. Does it have any legends associated with it? And I don't think it does. No. So this is the pipe that we want. And whether there's an instance here, the pipes came in as SketchUp, so I have to call that, or it'll get really messed up. Call it PVC pipe set 4-inch to 1/2. And somewhere in this set, which it just has instances, it doesn't have apparently. So this instance here is part of the whole thing. So what do I do there? I really want to grab the whole piece, which apparently are these 3 instances up here, and I want to hit Control J if I can to join them into one, and then I'll have a reliable 4-inch PVC pipe. And then I can manipulate that more. So, and I guess this is the 1/2 inch there. So again, I have to move things around and select only that. And then it's going to select all these instances here, and I'm going to hit Control J and make that, I guess it should be, I should always name it like PVC pipe 1/2 inch, and I should do the same thing with this. It should be called PVC pipe 4-inch, and I'm also going to be using a 2-inch. Now how do I know which one is the 2-inch? Well, it would be 1/2 of the 4, so I don't know if it's this one here, but we're going to isolate these, hit Control J to join it, and whatever it is, I'm going to call it PVC pipe 2-inch question mark, because I don't know if it's 2-inch, but what I'll do to check if it's 2-inch is bring it over to here and see if indeed, if I were to move it, could I fit 2 into here? Hit Control D, move that one up. Yeah, looks like this is the 2-inch. Alright, so I don't have to have the question mark anymore. I have PVC and 2-inch, and then I have another PVC 2-inch .001, so I've got 2 versions of it. In the SolarCities IBC tank, we use a 4-inch pipe and we use 2-inch pipes. So the others, this must be like a 3-inch and a 2.5 or a 2 1/4 and a 1 1/4 and a this and that. There's different sizes in here, but it looks like I've got a 4-inch and I got a 2-inch and I got a 1/2 inch, which are the ones I really am going to focus on using. So for the 4-inch pipe, now bring it up. Actually, we need to clone it because we need a backup. But I'm going to take this 4-inch pipe and bring it up